Today we will be talking about ketamine-assisted psychotherapy and ketamine as a treatment for mental health disorders. My name is Alex. I'm the moderator. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hive Bio, the first ketamine-assisted psychotherapy residential center. And first, I would love to everyone to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Hira Kramer, and I am a psychedelic integration guide and therapist. I went to CIIS and got my master's in psychedelic therapy, and I work with a few different modalities, ketamine being one of them, and I do preparation and integration and facilitation.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia. I'm the Chief Science Officer and co-founder at Hive Bio. So originally my background is I have my degree in cell biology and genetics. Then I did PhD in neuroscience. So I came from the academia background, and then I switched more to the psychedelic medicines and this industry. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Schlengel. I'm a Yale and Columbia trained anesthesiologist here in Miami. Founder of Kismet Health, which is a premier concierge word-of-mouth longevity service that uses therapeutic ketamine to guide individuals through mental wellness breakthroughs as a foundation for layering upon lifestyle interventions for living longer and better. I've kind of extended my passion for healing and helping beyond the operating room and utilized my extensive knowledge, experience, and training to bring a data-driven approach towards non-traditional psychedelic therapies to responsibly and more effectively use psychedelics for the betterment of individuals and society as a whole.
Thank you so much, guys, for the introduction. I think we shall start with, the first question, and we definitely have like a surge in number of ketamine infusion centers and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy clinics in the States, in Europe, and all over the world. So, but what's the main difference? What's the main difference in approaches between ketamine infusion centers and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy centers, and why we kind of talk here more about ketamine-assisted psychotherapy as the new modality, and always say psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, mentioning ketamine-assisted psychotherapy.
I wouldn't be surprised if we're running.
Okay, I think it's really interesting because a lot of ketamine infusion centers now really just focus on the ketamine itself without much of the ancillary services integration, or they do it on a very minor scale. And while ketamine is known to actually be a very powerful antidepressant and mood stabilizer, in fact, one of the best things to treat acute suicidality, it's a very short-lived neuroplastic effect. And if there isn't something that's done to integrate that and to hardwire those new neuroplastic pathways, then they're going to die and wither, and you're basically just left with a psychedelic experience, not anything that leads to change and betterment or self-exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. So the window of neuroplasticity with ketamine is like the longest one, so it's prolonged up to 72 hours. So, and if the person with huge traumas, with deep traumas, just back home, like in the toxic relationships or like stressful work or whatever, after just like infusion of the ketamine without any integration or without any support, it might be even more damaged. And also there are different options of the just administration of the ketamine. So there are clinics with IV infusions, IV infusions, with IM injections and with lozenges. So the difference is also like really, really huge. So I'm more on the side of IM and IV, not with lozenges, and I will explain why. So with lozenges, mostly people need to hold it in the mouth just like for 15 minutes, for example, not to swallow the saliva. And for many people, it gives even more anxious and stress and so on. So I believe that the best approach here is IV or IM, and definitely with integration and with support, not just like infusion or injection and just left to go home. Yeah.
I think an important thing to also mention is set and setting. As we know in psychedelics, it's very important. And when you're dealing with just a clinic and a clinical situation where you just go in and get an IV or IM and you're not actually being supported before, during, and after, the setting can really impact the experience that you're having and the healing capabilities. I also think it's important to mention it's about 10% preparation, 30% the journey itself, and then 60% in integration. So if you're skipping the entire 60% of integration where there isn't a lot of dissecting and understanding kind of the dissociative nature of that, what happened during the journey, the results of actionable change can be significantly lowered because there isn't a ton of process around how am I taking what I felt, what I experienced, what I saw, and actually bringing it back into my lifestyle that I need to change so deeply. So being able to really describe and be able to articulate what you experienced and then integrating that into actionable change into your life takes time and it takes assistance. And so that's, I think, the difference between set and setting being really important and being able to also have someone there to help you really integrate all that is transpires during your session.
Thank you, thank you. I think as ketamine-assisted psychotherapy has recently become a part of a healthcare system, it should have its own indications and counterindications. And I think we should, talk a little bit more about indications and main counterindications for the treatments. So here we have clinicians from the United States, and also we represent a clinic from Europe. So what are the main indications and counterindications for ketamine-assisted psychotherapy here in the United States?
I can say, let me expose a little bit on some of this, which is right now it's used as an off-label treatment for multi-drug resistant depression, which is actually not a thing. It's just depression that we don't know how to treat it for. So it's almost like it gets its own label as something the medical community does. Well, we have drugs, but we don't know which ones work for you. None of them work for you, so let's try something else. But the truth is, labeling people with this is not necessarily what's needed for indicating someone for treatment. And it's a shame because what ketamine is, where we talk a lot about these clinics and moving into the medical sphere, it's still one foot in the shadow because you have to, well, first of all, you're regulated on advertising for it. You can't make any claims about ketamine actually treating depression or any mood disorder. And you have to label someone with a mood disorder. But really, this is something for all of us where we talk about the mood disorders or whatever that we have are really just a symptom of what's going underneath, the misunderstanding of self. And really, in that sense, ketamine could be used for everyone, but it's being very regulated and it's being kind of still put into regimented clinics that, importantly, does have a focus on safety, but it doesn't allow for the exploration and the integration into sort of the non-traditional modalities, which is just as important. And so I think I don't know what happens in Europe, but here I still feel like because of that, patients aren't getting exactly what they need. They are getting some benefits from it, but they're not getting the full treatments.
Yeah. And also, we're talking about indications and contraindications. So there are a lot of scientific articles where ketamine helps with depression, of course, anxiety, burnouts, PTSD, eating disorders. There are just a lot of things. Also, even stable addictions, which links more with traumas, not the addictions that need some kind of detoxification or whatever. So it's more like trauma-linked addictions. And you also ask about contraindications. Of course, yeah, there are. So ketamine is any other substance, even vitamin C, for example, it also has some contraindications. Someone might have their allergy on vitamin C. Ketamine is also much stronger, of course. So the main contraindications are their heart attacks, some like big issues with health. But ketamine is one of the most gentle things from the medical side. The main contraindications are psychiatric here, so panic attacks, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, psychotic episodes. So like it's all needed to be checked before the therapy. So usually just like they're, of course, obligatory to do medical assessment and psychiatric assessment before prescription and the therapy itself.
A point that I'd like to make too is this piece around ketamine being a dissociative. It's the benefit of that is that when someone is experiencing treatment-resistant depression, the disassociation from that narrative that's running and looping in the everyday, you get a break from that experience. And that can help, that spaciousness, that in a lower dose, that disassociation from the self that is running and looping in this narrative is really healing and has the potential to really rewire and reprogram how we see ourselves and what we say in that internal chatter. Something on that same line, though, that can be a counterindication or an issue is that when it's misused or abused or overused, we begin to disassociate from society, from the world. So what we're seeing is with nasal sprays and with things like with lozenges, there can be this tendency of very easy use and very quick dissociation, which can have, without support, a very massive impact on the person's ability to regulate, to be able to engage in life itself. So I see that as a potential risk of these modalities is the very thing that helps heal, which is the separation from the narrative, can also create distance and separation in society, especially excuse me, when these modalities are being brought to more rural areas where there's not a ton of help and integration and social interaction. So that is something that I kind of wanted to bring in.
I think that's really an interesting point because that probably explains a lot of the guide rails put around ketamine right now. Whereas like ketamine is very much like any SSRI. You know, if you take it once and do nothing, it won't happen. So you have to do it frequently. So the question is, what's the safety profile and how much kind of escapism and dependency do you have on it? Because it can actually be, it's a unique experience, different than anything else. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. And, just getting back to this question of indications and counterindications, I would really stress out the thing that, in the United States, a great number of people can access ketamine and ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. If you fly over the ocean and for example, look at what is happening in the United Kingdom, you see that, the local regulator is very strict with an access to ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. So you can only get ketamine-assisted psychotherapy if you have 2 SSRIs failed and if you are treatment-resistant depression. And it's very strict. NHS and CQC Commission is very strict with that. So I think that, and it's fantastic that actually here, much more people can get ketamine-assisted psychotherapy and can get an access to, change, their mental health. When we usually, and actually always talk about psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, we always say that preparation is important. The whole administration, setting is important, and of course integration. So, okay, this is like the 3 main parts of the whole process. What do you think is the main one? Just like where does all of the magic happens, or is it like spread nicely over these 3 layers? What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
You start first.
Like integration for sure. So, like as my colleague said, so integration is the key, and like the main magic is there. Preparation is usually just to talk about like the goals and motivations, and to find a little bit of their like tales, like of the traumas and so on. And also, it's more about to talk about the ketamine journey, that like what person will feel to make it more like secure and like feeling of that safety. But like the integration is the magic, of course, and ketamine itself is just a catalyzer of the process.
It's fascinating. I give patients in the operating room ketamine, and what I've noticed is in the recovery room, the ones that get ketamine are actually a little bit happier. after their surgery. They're just, their mood is a little bit better, they're dealing with their pain a little bit better. But none of them are having breakthroughs. They're not having awakenings. They're not changing their lives. So all of that comes with the integration and the psychotherapy. But the real question is about the psychotherapy is, when do you have it? And actually, studies don't show any benefit for it being before, during, or after. There's no distinction. Maybe there's not also probably enough robust studies that could delineate when's the ideal time to actually integrate the experience, or even to just use ketamine as a opening catalyst or tool for people to be able to talk about their feelings. Some people going into this might have such hesitancy to open up that you give them a higher dose that they're going to recoil and rescind and actually kind of go deeper in themselves, not in a good way, I mean, and you've had a setback. Other times, those patients, and this is individualizing the ketamine treatment, those might just need a lower dose to actually being able to talk about things that they couldn't actually bring up, to access those memories that might be hidden. But there are also studies that show a higher dose is better in the long run. So the question is, what's really best for the patient? And then how do you monitor that? So you've given them a treatment, but is that the right treatment for them? You know, what assessments are you using from that patient to decide what the further course of treatment should be? You know, and for me, I believe that's a very data-driven approach, and not just necessarily through integration and talking about themselves, because often you don't know what's going on with yourself. There's such covert things. You know, unless you really were going in because you couldn't wake up 4 days a week, you know, get out of bed, but now you could do it, and you could get out of bed, you know, 5 days a week. Wow, that's a big difference. You've seen the change. But for most people, it's really subtle. And unless you get that buy-in from that individual, they might taper off. They might not actually give it the full effort to make those changes, to continue with the integration. And so I think you know, as we look at ketamine to move into this medical sphere, but in the right set and setting, is to actually add some of these scales and these questionnaires to see whether people are actually living in line with what their values are. Because you'd be shocked. Many people could value things in life, and then when they actually assess, are they living it, there's a big discrepancy. And if you could measure their depression symptoms and their anxiety symptoms, and you could tease out very small changes, well, now you've got an individual willing to do the integration, willing to do the work more, and actually you have a framework of tailoring your ketamine treatments. Frequency, dose, how are they doing? Are they responding better to this? Do they see more changes in their anxiety? They might not be able to report that to you. Most people come in and they're so out of touch with their feelings that they can't accurately reflect on them. And so you have to tease that out, and I think that's sort of the biggest thing right now, is finding the way to do that so you actually have reproducible effects and treatments.
Yeah, as a therapist, I think it's really interesting because I can go on and on and on about integration and the importance. But with ketamine specifically, one thing that I found particularly important and relevant is actually the preparation. The ability to prepare a client for the dissociative nature and their ego kind of separating. Actually, if they've never had this experience before, it can be really alarming and really overwhelming and terrifying at times. So being able to prepare, what is their expectation? How desperate are they? Because also that clinging, that gripping to this needs to be the magic bullet, this is the thing, that very mentality is often what I found blocked the most healing, because they expected it to look a certain way, and also that kind of suggests this more passive experience. In pharmacology, we were taught that this one pill, this SSRI, this one thing is going to help, it's going to solve all your issues, and ketamine really isn't that thing. What it is, it's a tool. I always like to describe it to my clients as your life is like a lawn, beautiful and well-groomed, and as life happens, leaves and branches and things fall and get trapped and make basically the lawn a total mess. And ketamine is a tool. It's a rake. It's a riding lawnmower, right? You have to pick up the tool and actually use it to be able to get the benefits of what's happening here, right? It's not a gardener that's going to come over and do it for you, right? And I like to share that we didn't get here overnight, right? These narratives and these stories and these traumas that we've gone through didn't happen overnight, and the solutions will not happen overnight. And so what I have found is the preparation around how are you coming into this? How much effort are you actually willing to stand up and do for yourself? Because at the end of the day, these modalities are tools to do the work. This isn't a magic bullet, a magic potion to be able to, erase all traumas and be able to kind of live a perfect life, just starting with integration. So I think there's a key piece around really preparing who's going in and how they're holding this framework. And then, of course, the integration on the other side of how are they picking up the tools, how are they using this to really excavate their healing in a way that is curated and really profound for their own journey.
You've nailed it. Thank you. Thank you. We all understand now, preparation, administration, and integration. What does happen with your patient after? So do you say, okay, we have provided free integration session, goodbye, or is it like ongoing integration? What is the approach? And what is your view on so-called boosters in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy? When, for example, you have ongoing psychotherapy, you have done your main ketamine-assisted psychotherapy course, then you do ongoing psychotherapy, and then you start doing some ketamine infusion as boosters. It's quite becoming, more popular. What is your opinion? Does it really help?
I think it's important just to kind of maintain that level of awareness. I think there can be touch-ups and touch points, kind of like anything that we do. We do like maintenance. Like if you have a car, you do kind of an oil change and a tune-up. I think with mental health, it's quite similar because as we heal and as we become more clear around the parts of ourself and the parts of our psyche that have been repressed, suppressed, lying dormant, those triggers and those activations, kind of like the grief stage, can come in different forms and at different times in our life. So I think it is important to be able to stay regular with your check-ins with your therapist and with your clinician, and really set up a regularity that feels actually important for you. Again, keeping in mind the codependency and the abuse tendencies of dissociatives, and just having a professional that can really help and advise in those ways is really important to keep and maintain balance. Because I think it's a subtle balance, right? Being able to maintain the healing and continue the work and not slip. The way I like to think of it is when we do psychedelics and when we do dissociatives, it's when there's basically our neural pathways that we've done of these habits that we've done every single day. You wake up every morning, you grab the coffee, you open the newspaper, you do that becomes like a big, deep, sludgy groove in the snow. And by doing ketamine or doing these different mind-altering substances, it allows you the neuroplasticity of like a fresh coat of snow so that you can create a little bunny trail of a new way of being, a new way of acting, a new way of engaging with the world around you. So having regular check-ins to be able to have that fresh coat of snow in the neural plasticity and the neural pathways is important to be able to maintain long, sustaining results.
Yes, absolutely. There is no just one rule about the boosters, about their how often do you need to do the boosters and so on. So it depends on the cases. So for someone it will be needed, absolutely. For someone not. And also all these right habits, after the integration and new habits, it will give the answer, how the person will bring the new habits and new behavior after the ketamine therapy, after the right integration in the life. It will depend also will he or she needs a booster or not. So it's really, really individual.
Yeah, to echo some of that, it's interesting because this is a process. It's again, we didn't get there in a day, and so you're not going to heal in a day. Everybody goes at their own pace. So boosters are necessary because they help with as you peel the onion, there's more things to uncover. The question is, how often? And right now, as these type of treatments are more in the public sphere, there's a lot of scrutiny by the FDA and other organizations on the abuse aspect. And so you need to be able to find a way to have good reason for why you're doing a booster and how often you're doing it. And from that comes from a continued relationship, whether through therapy or other integrative models or for collecting data, which I am still a very big proponent of, so that you have a reason for actually doing the booster, because it could be a very slippery slope. As we said, it could be a great experience, and you could be running away from your problems as opposed to looking at life as almost like a psychedelic experience where you're supposed to learn what the world is showing you and handle it appropriately, and kind of go into yourself through the mechanisms that you've developed, and not necessarily rely on a medicine tool to do that.
Yeah, thank you. And probably, the last question, as we are running out of time. So I think there is enough stigma still with, lots of stigma actually with psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. Probably a bit of less with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. How do you address, stigma? And have you ever encountered some stigma with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy? So yeah, would be very interesting to understand.
For many people, I think like their scientific evidences and the clinical trials are their most valid source of information. So as much as we could bring like their clinical data, researchers which are proven by the universities, scientists, so on, so this will be really good to decrease stigma, absolutely. And also it's just natural process, so it's became more and more often like public educational talks, some series on the Netflix, whatever. So it becomes just natural process for people to understand their powerful, the power of all these substances, and to think about these as about the tool, not about just about the drug.
Yeah. I think. You have a lot of people who still look at ketamine as a recreational drug, and they have a mentality or something an identity they built around themselves that they don't do drugs, that they're clean, they're fine with conventional Western medicines, but from this standpoint, they see it as something that is unfortunately stigmatized in their mind. And you have other people who are just scared very much of the powers of the medicine because they have heard stories of other psychedelics like LSD or acid. And so they bring in a lot of preconceived notions as far as what it's, as far as the true benefits of it. They can't see it because they're not open to seeing it as a true healing modality, mostly probably because of the last 40, 50 years here in the country at least, on how it's been labeled by the government.
I think one of the benefits as well is that during the 60s and 70s, when there was the psychedelic revolution and all that was happening, and there was a lot of really intense, the war on drugs happened, and there was a lot of backlash that happened. Ketamine kind of hid out underneath that. It wasn't really at the forefront. So when you think of the term psychedelic, ketamine kind of has this. It kind of got underneath the radar in a way. So there is that benefit of ketamine kind of not having that same psychedelic like acid would, or like mushrooms and all those different things. So there is a benefit to being able to introduce this to clients that don't have that same mentality or that same memory of that in the 60s. And also, to the point of I don't do drugs, I've never even smoked weed, I don't want to lose my mind. There's all these things, the stigma around the impact and the lasting effects of this work. And being able to really meet a client where they're at in whatever is coming up for them, whether it's fear around lack of control, or am I going to be like this forever? Is it going to do permanent damage? All of those things, and being able to really, through psychoeducation and through really the knowledge and understanding of the molecule itself and the way that it works with the brain and the way that it can help in different ways with different modalities like somatic therapy or gestalt work or transpersonal. Through knowledge and through education, I think we can really lower the stigma and lower the fear that can come up for clients, both in the preparation and afterwards in the integration.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah.